Hi, this is Audrey Blair, and you're listening to the Change is Hard podcast, episode 30. Hey there, welcome back to the podcast. If this is your first time, hello, and thank you for joining me. And if you're coming back again, I'm happy that you are here. Now, today, I want to tackle something that might be running or maybe even ruining your leadership into the ground without you really realizing it. If you are consistently feeling overextended, overwhelmed, maybe even wondering why you're putting in more effort, but it's not getting you further, or you're not getting out the results from the effort that you're putting in, then that's what we're going to talk about today. So first, I'm going to walk you through some signs that, or some things that you're doing that's keeping you stuck and potentially leading you to burnout. Then I want to walk you through a fundamental shift that will put you in a position of sustainability. Now, a lot of people burn out of leadership because they don't make this shift effectively. And I also think there are a lot of great leaders that are holding back from leadership because of this reason as well. So first, let's start with the signs. So these are things that you're doing that's driving you further and further away from the direction that you really ultimately want to go as a leader. So the first thing is you are holding on to too much. You know you should delegate, but every time you try, it feels like more work. It feels uncomfortable. Often I get around this issue, people saying things like, I don't really trust my team or trust this person to do it. And then you tell yourself, well, it's just easier if I do it myself. I'll just take care of it. And you're doing that a lot throughout the day. You're like, well, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. So number 2, your calendar is filled with meetings, but there's really very little momentum at the end of the day. So you end each day wondering what actually moved forward. You're really, really busy, but not a lot of productivity. Maybe you're overworking, but not producing very many results. And you keep thinking, I just have to keep things moving. Number 3, you're solving the same problems over and over and over again. This happens and comes up quite a bit when people keep coming to you with the same questions. And instead of building their capacity, instead of helping them to develop into being able to answer the problem on their own, instead of you putting the responsibility back on them, you keep providing the answers. And that is not a strategy. That is certainly not a long-term strategy. That is simply being in survival mode. And if you think about it, people keep coming to you to solve their problems. If you grow and expand your leadership or your sphere of influence or the number of people you take on larger projects or you're leading a lot more people, eventually this will drive you nuts. But it's something that I consistently see showing up. Number 4, you keep saying yes, even when you know you shouldn't. You know you want to be a team player, especially if it's a peer or your boss that keeps asking you to do things. And you want to be that team player. You don't want to let people down, but now you're stretched too thin and you're starting to feel that resentment cropping up and it's creeping in. And that whole, well, I can't say no shows up. And then number 5, you're just exhausted, but you think pushing harder is solution. I'm just going to get through. We'll push through. Maybe you tell yourself, I just need to get through this season, or I need to get through this quarter, or I need to get through this project. And you've been saying that for months, though. You've probably been saying that for the last year, and you've convinced yourself that burnout is just a part of being a high performer. You keep telling yourself to push through without any pause and without any reason for doing so. It just becomes the habit. And there are other signs and other things that you're doing, but those are some of the top 5 that I see, and I see quite consistently. So does any of these sound familiar to you? This is what I'm calling growth mode. This is you being in growth mode. Now, here's the thing. Growth mode is not bad. In fact, a lot of people have growth as one of their core values. Taking on more responsibility, taking on larger projects, more risk, starting to lead people or lead more people, all of that is good. There's nothing wrong with that. The challenge is at some point you actually reach your physical capacity to do these things. Your physical capacity is finite. There's only so many meetings you can go to. There's a limit to the number of hours that are available to you to work. Eventually, your body will start giving you signals that it's just too much. But just like a startup company, at first, it's fun, it's energizing, it's exciting. They're hiring a lot of people. They're throwing a lot of money at things. They're buying all the good stuff. At some point, even in business, they have to get better at managing the resources that are available. You can't keep throwing money at people at problems. You actually have to start solving those problems with what you have. And I think it's the same thing that applies to your leadership. Now, good question to answer, and I want you to think about this. And this is a question that I often ask my clients. If you continue on this trajectory, you keep working the way you're working, you keep adding things to your list of responsibilities and not delegating, you keep working late and on the weekends, you keep taking your laptop to your kids' games, you are not taking care of yourself, what does this look like in a year, in 2 years? Often I get things like exhaustion, burnout, my health isn't that great. And for many people, they're already on this path. They're already starting to feel that exhaustion. They may already be feeling burnt out. And the reason why is because that is not sustainable. You can't grow by overcommitting and giving more effort forever. At some point, you have to shift in what I'm calling scale mode or scaling. And this is the framework that I've been developing with my clients. It's a way of thinking that borrows from business strategy and applies directly to our leadership. In fact, in my business, I'm going through a very similar thing right now. There's a lot of things that I have been doing and creating procedures and doing manually and doing all on my own. Now I'm at the point where I have become a bottleneck. And so I have to put some things in the back end. I just invested in some software to help me to clean up my back end because I have to stop doing some of my processes manually. The next step is I need to hire another person to come in to help me to do some of the things that I'm doing. So in business, this applies. With your leadership, it applies as well. So let me give you a real world example. Actually, I'm going to give you 2. One of my clients, I'm going to call him Matt. He recently stepped into a more senior role. He was already pretty high up in the organization. Now he's a more senior role. His pace picked up, his pressure increased. He's dealing with much larger issues. He's in another country, and that country was his region, still is. And his region expanded to incorporate the strategy for not only his country, but now another country. So of course, his calendar has been jammed up. And he's also been trying to prepare for a high profile meeting with the CEO of his company and a dignitary from his country. And these are high pressure, high things that he's supposed to be working on. And yet his energy is being drained by a single issue that he's been dealing with for weeks and weeks and weeks. He had a team member that he placed in an interim leadership role. So this is someone he wasn't sure was ready, and she actually wasn't even sure if she wanted the role. So he put her in the role in the interim to see how it goes, more of a kind of as a testing. But as the decision point got closer, Matt asked her really simply to formally express her interest in the role by just sending him an email that says, "Hey, I'm interested. I want to apply," so that he can forward that to HR. He didn't ask her to redo her resume or send in her resume or do anything like that. Just simply send a quick email that expresses her interest in this role. Sounds simple, doesn't it? Well, she didn't do it. And she didn't do it for weeks. So, and a part of the reason why he wanted her to do it, one, it's just the process and he asked her to do it. But two, there are other people that are interested in the role. There are other people that he's looking at for the role. And so when you have that situation, there is a process that you need to follow. But she's creating all this drama. And what should have been a 5-minute task became weeks of emotional loops and indirect conversation and all this side chatter. In fact, she didn't send the email, but she was telling everyone that she deserved the role and would be upset if she didn't get it. All the while not telling them that she didn't officially apply for the role. So of course it's creating this drama with the team and people are coming to him. And in the meantime, Matt, the boss, he keeps trying to explain and justify his procedure or policy and being accommodating to her as to why he basically needs her to send him an email. And the longer it dragged on, the more it consumed him. But here's the kicker. When we got on a call, the kicker was she wasn't even doing a good enough job to get the promotion. She's not even doing that great of a job in the role. And there were other red flags that were happening that he was ignoring. But he kept trying to accommodate her indecision and justifying his process and holding space. And he was dealing with this drama that was created by the team and on the team. And to be fair, and a lot of times we learn this, he was doing what he thought good leaders are told to do. Show up, give support, somehow this is going to help her, give her more and more leeway. But now he's drowning. And by the time we got on the call, he needed to make this decision within a week. And all this drama had been created around it. And we had to talk about really shifting. And this is where I introduced this growth versus scaling mode to him. Let me give you one more example before I talk about the shift. Another client I was working with, a business owner, and her business provides a service for other companies. She talks about having a great team. And one of her clients decided during the contracting period that they were going to open it up and ask everyone that was interested in turning in an RFP. And for those of you who aren't familiar, an RFP is a request for proposal. They're tedious, they're long, they're draining, they're stressful. It's just a lot of work to generate and create RFPs. And a lot of times the procurement of another company, they want this because basically they want to look at who can give us the most with the least amount of money. At least that's my opinion of it. Now, this is a client of hers that she's worked with for a couple of years. So she's the incumbent. They know her work. They're happy with her work product. So she actually hired out some help to get the RFP turned in. And then they met with everyone in an interview. She did the interview really well. In fact, they were like, wow, thank you so much for putting in so much work in the RFP. You are the incumbent. We're happy with what you're doing. And so it seems like it's a shoo-in. It seems like there was just one of those things that they had to go through the process and they were probably going to select her. Now, of course, it's not guaranteed. It's always an opportunity for the organization to change their mind. And that may not be personal. And so procurement did what procurement does, and they sent a final request that said something like, hey, thank you for your RFP. We're going to be making a decision soon, and now we're asking you for your best and final offer. Now, she had already given them a little bit of a discount in the RFP, and she was so stuck in indecision. And days and days and days went by without her just deciding what she was going to do. Either give them an additional discount or stick with her guns with the discount that she had already provided. The value was already there. She's already proven the work that she has. And so we had a conversation around, part of her felt like she didn't want to give them a further discount because she didn't want to devalue the work that she was already doing. Or, of course, the other option is to just give them what they want. Now, there is no wrong answer here. This is not a conversation about what to do. The point is, she sat on this for days and days and days. And the day that we had our session was the day that she needed to turn it in. And so we spent the entire session. Actually, we didn't spend the entire session. We spent the first half of the session going, you just need to make a decision. You're going to write that email and we're going to get it sent. It was about the decision. Doesn't matter what the decision was, but she allowed herself to toil and the stress built up, and she had all these stories in her head, and she was making it about, I don't want to make the wrong decision. That's a huge one that comes up. She simply just didn't make it. And she almost lost it by not actually turning in the email asking for the best and final. And so we can do this sometimes. We can toil and not make decisions, and we can hold on to things. So here's the shift. Growth mode is you're spending more time on things. You're putting in more effort. You're putting in more labor. Scaling mode is where you spend more time on providing more clarity, being more transparent, delegating more, creating more impact, making decisions quicker so that you can move forward. There's you doing more without more of you, if that makes sense. So I'll explain it a little bit more, but scaling is about you creating a place for sustainability. And so with Matt, what we talked about was, one, let's just deal with the conversation that he's been avoiding. He also wasn't trusting his instincts. He knew that she was not going to be a good hire for this role. And this whole email thing was really just the icing on the cake, because in that leadership position, he needed someone who was going to be able to more quickly align to what they were doing as a team. Doesn't mean that he wasn't open to hearing, having a discussion or talking things through, but there needed to be alignment more quickly. And once we were able to talk through that, let's just decide. Again, it comes down to making decisions faster. So let's just decide, are you going to give her the role or not? And he made a decision. And then we talked about, okay, here's how you have that conversation. Once he had that down, then the pressure started to ease. He could breathe a little bit better and focus on the more important, bigger issues that he had on his calendar. And you see, in growth mode, we just, again, take on so much. We don't let things go, and we don't make decisions quickly. Now, scaling, on the other hand, is about creating that sustainable leadership. And where I talked about your physical capacity does end, it's finite. Well, I think where we need to spend a lot more time is building your emotional capacity. And what I mean by that is building your capacity for discomfort so that you can get to the place where your team is solving problems without you. Some of you are uncomfortable with problems being solved without you. You have to build your capacity for that discomfort. Some of you is where you stop absorbing the chaos and start creating systems. Some of you have a hard time just making decisions about what system to put into place. Sometimes there's no wrong answer, just pick one. That's building that capacity for discomfort and the fear of making a wrong decision. It's also where you move from being the one doing the work to being the leader who creates the conditions for the work to get done and to thrive. That means you have to build your capacity to be more strategic in your thinking, to lay out more clearly the culture you want to build on your team, to be able to help people to figure out how to communicate and how to collaborate more effectively. So if you've been feeling like you can't keep going at this pace, if you're feeling like you're doing more but getting less in return, or if you're feeling like you are constantly at the center of every situation, that is a problem. Now it's time to move out of growth mode and start scaling your leadership, scaling your influence, scaling your ability to multiply you as a leader through developing other people. And so as I talked about that, building your capacity for that discomfort, well, what does that mean? That means you can give feedback. Now, does it mean it's going to be all of a sudden comfortable for you giving feedback? No. What it means is at the beginning, it will feel uncomfortable, but you're going to do it anyway, and you're going to do it faster. So when we talk about making this shift, a lot of times we're afraid of the feelings that we're feeling, the discomfort that we're feeling, and these stories that are being generated. I even had someone say, I don't think they want feedback. And I vehemently disagree. I think people want feedback. What they don't want is your emotional baggage. They don't want your opinion. They don't want you coming down on them. They don't want you telling them what their intention was. They don't want you trying to guess what's in their brain. But they do want some clarity on what it is that they can do to continue their journey. And they're probably still in growth mode. What they do want is you being clear on not only the negative feedback, but also the positive feedback. When you say things like, hey, you did a great job with that thing, well, that feels good in the moment, but what specifically made it a great job? What did they do so they can continue doing that? And vice versa. So when you're thinking about how you can expand what you do to get more done, you are going to have to learn to delegate. You're going to have to learn to trust your people. You're going to have to learn to let some of these things go. And by the way, when you do that, guess what? You don't have to work all those hours. You don't have to work on the weekends. You don't have to take your laptop to your kid's game or miss the game altogether because you're working. So the core of this concept or this framework is growth asks the question, what more can I do personally? Scaling is how can I create greater impact without personally doing more? So think about where you are in your journey. It's probably time for you to start shifting into scaling mode so that you can grow without you having to do more. Okay, so let's recap. So first we talked about the things you're doing that's keeping you busy but stuck, taking on more tasks without releasing or delegating other tasks, doing a lot of meetings with very little momentum. In fact, sometimes there are meetings that you're in or your team is in, and you don't even know why you're there or why they're there. If you have team members in a meeting and they don't know why they're there, that's a problem. That's a leadership problem. That's a lack of clarity problem. You're solving the same problems over and over and over again. You're saying yes when you shouldn't say yes, and you know that you shouldn't say yes. And then you keep just pushing through. Got to keep pushing through. Let me just keep doing one more hour, one more tweak, one more thing. So instead, you want to start shifting into multiplying your results without multiplying your efforts. And here's some very small and simple ways to do that I've already said in our time together. 1, make decisions faster and execute faster. I know this is a hard one. This is one that I continually struggle with myself. Like I'm the queen of like, no, I need to evaluate one more time. So I get this one. This one is challenging. But the quicker you can make decisions, the quicker you can move on, the quicker you can get that thing behind you. And sometimes when we're holding on to one decision, it's because we're avoiding something else that's on the other side of it. So we got to get to that. The other thing is delegate more quickly. Let go of that control. Start trusting your team. I love it when I hear clients go, I have such a great team. They're fantastic. But then I go, well, why aren't you delegating? And then it's silence. Well, they don't do it the way I would do it. See, that's a different issue. I probably should have a whole podcast episode on what it means to delegate, what that looks like. But them doing it differently does not fundamentally mean that it's wrong. That means you have to build your capacity for the discomfort of seeing someone do something differently than you would do it and trust them in the process. And if they fall short, again, nothing has gone wrong. Now here's the opportunity for you to give that feedback and help them to grow. And that's the next thing. Give the feedback so that people can grow. And let your team do their thing. Stop showing up everywhere. You don't need to be in every meeting. Let somebody else run a meeting. Let somebody else be in charge. Let somebody take all the notes and then come back to you and just give you an update on what's been going on. This is so, so important. And as I said before, a lot of people bail out of leadership because they don't make this shift. And a lot of people, frankly, stay out of leadership. And we're missing out on some great leadership. We're missing out on your view. We're missing out on your perspective. We're missing out on a lot if you're holding yourself back because you're afraid of stepping into it or afraid of letting go of what you're doing so that you can bring in greater influence. And I know that this is a way that we can be stuck. And I understand. I remember going from having a small team, or just me, and then having a small team of 2, and then moving to a team of 10, having a team of 10 and thinking through, well, how much do I give them? What's too much? What's too little? It is a rigorous process, and one that you can get help and support in, but most importantly, one that you have to shift the way you see yourself in your role. So if you are stuck in that loop of giving so much effort and then not really recovering, it's time for you to start recovering. All right. I hope that this has been helpful for you. I'd love to hear some of the areas where you might be stuck or some things that might be hard for you. And I'd love to also help you. So thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe or follow or whatever it is on whatever you're listening. Share this with a leader in your life who maybe needs to stop surviving and start scaling. And I will catch you the next time. Hey, if you need help in your leadership to lead more clearly, with energy, with clarity, and with long-term influence, I'd love to help you. In the show notes, grab a link to schedule a consult call, and let's see how my one-on-one coaching can help you further what you're doing in your leadership.